Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Mentzer, the instructor at the Chattanooga Public Library's recording studio downtown on the second floor. For this video, I'd like to focus on sort of an extension from the last video, which was pre-production and recorded music. This video is going to focus on sequence music and a quick overview of the differences. Recorded music is going to be where the recordings are going to be the most of the recordings are going to be done in the studio by individuals at the same time, where sequence music, a lot of that's going to be done ahead of time. So you can think of someone bringing in an instrumental track and then singing, rapping, whatever over top of that. And the major difference you're going to see here in this production chain is these different individual elements are all going to be done sort of at the same time. So you have the songwriting, recording, arranging, and editing stage all falling under this umbrella of production. So it's this combination of these stages all at once. And even mixing can occur during this stage. If you think about it, a producer is choosing certain sounds, specific sounds, based on how they fit into this mix that they're building up as they're putting the song together. And because of this, that sequence music will, down the line, arrive at the mixing stage partially mixed. So if you are a producer, you can think of, if you're a producer and you're going into the studio with your own individual instrumentals, it's a good idea to think about how you're putting these instrumentals together as far as time-based effects like reverb and delay, because you could possibly restrict some depth when you are recording vocals. I mean, you might want to run both of an instrument and the vocals through the same reverb, and if you already have a reverb on, say, an individual synth pad or something, then you're sort of restricting yourself. So if possible, if you are in this situation, you can bring the dry versions of your tracks into the studio and then play around with reverbs and stuff like that, sort of to glue everything together with the vocals that you're laying down. A little bit of a checklist that I like to mention for sequence music in the studio, and the top bullet point here, you can see to get stems for instrumentals. Well, what are stems? Basically, stems are a combination of different groups of instruments. And we'll take a look here at a list. So these are individual tracks for a session, say. And you can see there's quite a bit. You have kicks, snares, clap, snap, hi-hats, basses, various keyboards, guitars, and then all these different processing effects like reverbs, delays, and flangers and modulation effects. So imagine going into a studio and having all of these elements combined into one stereo track, and that's all you have to work with. So you can't lower the kick, you can't raise the snare, you can't really do much of anything except EQ the entire mix. So it's really, really limiting. And if you're paying for instrumentals, then you're going to definitely want to ask for stems. Now, let's see. What are stems? Boom. These are those individual tracks combined as stems. So you might have a drum mix, you might have the bass mix, keyboard mix, guitars, those kind of things. And then your effects could be combined in, say, reverb, a printed reverb track, delays, and then your modulation effects. And this is going to give you much more flexibility, at least to toy around with some different sonic elements in your mix. And what we really want is the most flexibility possible. So if you're paying for instrumentals, I highly advise people to at least get the stems. Now, if you're a producer, then you have access to the individual tracks, and that is the most important thing to be able to have if you are producing and you're also engineering, to be able to balance, because once you add the vocals in the mix, that's another element to think about. I always caution people to avoid using MP3s because it's low quality, so it's what's called lossy, and it can't be sort of improved. any at that point. You can't make it a higher fidelity at that point. It's already been compressed. If you can use like a WAV file, a high quality audio file, a lossless file, then down the line you can always compress that later on. But you want to keep things as high quality as possible until the very last stage, which would be mastering. A couple of key things to learn before you set foot in the studio is the tempo of the song. Now, it's not too hard to figure out the tempo of a song once you are in the studio, but it can save you a few minutes to have that tempo in your back pocket, so you can just quickly load that up and get it on the grid for Pro Tools. It makes editing so much easier, copying and pasting and things like that. The key of the song. Now, even if you're not a musician yourself, classically trained or whatever, you can sort of learn some basics of music theory to figure out the key of a song. Now, if you're writing the music yourself, then that's a lot easier than having to figure it out if you're not a musician. But once you get the hang of it, it's easier and easier. And this helps so much because if you're using something like Auto-Tune or Melodyne to tune the vocals, then it's a huge advantage to know the key of the song, because if you tune the vocals to the wrong key, then something's not going to sound right. And one piece of advice I always bring up is this sort of idea of the stereo instrumental. You can think of it as like a bowl of soup. And this is an analogy that I use a lot. If you're coming in, say you have a royalty-free instrumental, which there's websites where you can download free instrumentals and use them, but they're going to be an MP3, which is not high quality, and they're going to be a stereo mix, which is just one stereo track. Not much flexibility there when it comes to editing that. So it's like a cold soup. It's been made, it's been sitting out, and now you want to record vocals to that. That's like adding hot ingredients to that cold soup. So what you're doing is limiting yourself. And I realize that, there's not always an option to get individual tracks for sequence music. But I certainly advise, if you are paying for your instrumentals, to get those tracks, because the producer has them. And, sometimes they may charge you like an exclusive license or something like that. And some producers are a little bit more reserved as far as giving their tracks out like that. But certainly ask for at least stems, which would at least give you a little bit more flexibility. But all in all, we're making music and we're having fun. But you do want to sort of strive for your highest quality, and it's good practice for a producer as well to think of these processes as they go along creating the instrumental, because if you're a producer and you're not going to mix it, think about the point of view of the mixing engineer. And that's pretty much it. So good luck to everybody, and don't forget the importance of sort of taking these very simple basic steps before you come into the studio. All right.